Carson, Leno, Fallon. Now, it's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Thank you to CivilNet Studio in downtown Yerevan for providing their beautiful studios to Wine Talks with Paul K. Visit them at civilnetstudio.am. Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are at an away game today, a game. We are in Yerevan, Armenia, about to have a conversation with Mariam Saghatelyan, the owner of In Vino Wine Bar, the first wine bar in Yerevan. Introductions in just a moment. Wine Talks, of course, available on Spotify, not Shopify, Pandora, wherever you hang out for podcasting. And this episode is sponsored by Total Wine, where you find what you love and love what you find at Total Wine. Distilled spirits not available in Virginia and New Hampshire, and must be 21 to buy. But not why we're here. We're at a great conversation. I'm excited to be here today, to be tasting wines and to be exploring the wine industry in Armenia, because it's just growing very quickly. And one of the movers and shakers in this industry is Mariam. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome to Yerevan.
Thank you very much. This has been quite enlightening, actually. We were just talking about some of the investments that have occurred here, because we were here in 2006. I mean, this was a different town, right?
Completely
you remember?
Different, yeah. Yeah, we moved back when I was in 2008. So
you saw the whole thing.
I remember when you couldn't cross the streets, even when the light was green. I remember all of the faces of the people, like always discontent with life. And right now it's like 180-degree difference.
Let's start with that, because that's a really interesting concept, because it was, the Armenian people we've went through genocide. We've always had this sort of outlook on life as pretty depressing, and now I agree with you. There seems to be some optimism here, and seeing just even this walk street here with the downstairs mall. Mm-hmm. Last time we were here, it was like a swap meet, and now it's got polished white marble floors and real storefronts with real merchandise. How did this happen? And it happened so rapidly, really.
It feels like it did happen rapidly, but then when I look back, it's been at least 15 years I've been living here already, but time just flies by.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the specificities of Armenia, because there's so much to do here. You never have time to just, sit back and relax. There's always something to do, always some new project, always something new to do here that has been already done around the world. So it's kind of like a piece of dough, and that's what I love about Armenia.
That's interesting. Well, the fact that you've spent time in the States, you were there for 10 years, at formidable 10 years, the years where you're growing, and so you got to see a different part of the world and bring that sort of outlook and optimism to Armenia, because I think it needed it. But I think the comment we were making earlier on was, wow, the infrastructure has changed so much. And there's stores here, the restaurants, the food. I mean, in 2006, you couldn't find anything but kebab and roasted vegetables, right? And now there's Italian food and Chinese food and Mexican food. Where did that come from? Where's this? What is happening with this infrastructure?
Well, there are a few options that I can think of, a few variations of what has happened. One of them is that a lot of people have had the opportunity to go abroad and see what's going on around the world and bring that back with them. And other things are like foreign investments. So a lot of people are just moving back to their homeland. They realize that, we can't do all this unless we work the land where we are. So this is our land, and unless we're here, somebody else might be here, So I think a lot of that foreign investment, especially in the wine industry, you can see. When In Vino first opened, I keep telling people this, they don't believe me. We had 10 drinkable wines. You know what that's like?
That's more than I expected, to be frank.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. At that time, I think the investments had already started. So a few of the larger companies had started investing, buying land, and they had their own kind of strategies, And what happened was, if you bring your whole team from a country where you produce wine, you bring the whole team here, they do the same thing here. They have so much experience doing it. So I think that was one of the ways to pioneer winemaking in Armenia. And a lot of this foreign investment of people who just want to come back and they understand the land, they understand that the worth of the land. So, yeah.
The lack of technology, that clearly when we were here last, we were on a bus trip, stopped at a winery. Oh, Paul's got to taste this. So he's the wine guy, and the wine, like you said, was undrinkable, literally. And there was open vat concrete fermentation tanks, which is a very interesting technology to do. And I even, Piero Ancenza at
Sanitation.
the winery, I think his father started Sassicaia, or grandfather, but he uses open vat concrete fermentation. But this was repaired with like Henry's roof, tar. And so so bringing this technology to Armenia, because the industry is not new. I mean, right? We're going to go visit the 6,000-year-old winery tomorrow. And
yeah, I mean, throughout history, I think one thing that has remained constant in this area, which is currently Armenia, is wine.
Yeah.
Because throughout religions, when we were pagans, when we were believing in the god of the sun, wine was always there in rituals. And now, as Christianity also came around, wine. So I think that's one way it was preserved. And now we're trying to preserve ourselves, because if we don't know what we have, if we don't value what we have in terms of the culture of wine and the wines and the quality of the wines, who is going to value it? Who is going to say, oh, our wine is great, their Armenian wine is good? Who's going to know what is Armenia? People, we tell people, oh, we're from Armenia when we're abroad, and they go, Romania?
Yeah,
Albania?
Right.
They still don't know where Armenia is, much less understand that we have wine, we have lavash, we have this 6,100-year-old cave that's one of the oldest in the world.
Yeah, that's right. Oldest intact wineries. I say I'm proud that I was able to at least educate the surf culture in Southern California to the Armenian idea. And they still make jokes about my nose, which I feel very comfortable in Armenia with a nose like this.
I always make jokes, yeah.
But so let's talk about that for a second, because you said there were 10 wineries back then that were palatable, which means maybe there were more than that were unpalatable. But how many wineries now are functioning, making, let's call it world-class wines?
So according to the Vine and Wine Foundation, there are 111 wineries registered. But if we're looking at in terms of wineries, 111 wineries, but so many more people are making wine. So you don't need a winery necessarily to start making wine. You can have your own grapes. You can buy the grapes. You can make them at any winery, basically, or a custom crush facility, which we do have here in Armenia as well, which is a great stepping stone for anybody who wants to make wine. And so we have over, at Invino especially, we have right now 350 wines. So from 10 to 350, I think that's a huge growth.
350
drinkable wines.
Drinkable wines from Armenian wineries, of which maybe a winery has one or two or three brands.
Exactly.
From that. You mentioned the co-op, which is, I think you're talking about Vahe Kashgarian's. Is that one of them, or?
No, that Vahe Kashgarian, he was the one who founded, it was Semina Consulting, and then it turned into Wineworks. So there are two Vahes in the industry. One of them is Vahe Balulyan, who is my partner at Invino, and he was one of the founders of the club with my father, Hovakim, and my godfather, Andranik. So when they founded the club, the idea was just to create a space where people can just go, have conversations, intellectual conversations, they can share thoughts, ideas, so hence the name, the club. But if we look at it right now, as the name of the club has aged throughout the years, people think it's a dancing club, so it's a little, a little different.
Which there are a few of those around too.
Yeah, there are a lot, and
yes.
I think that's a completely different culture that needs to be spoken about. But anyway, wine. Let's go back to wine. So when they founded the restaurant, the club, they also had the cuisine, which was Armenian with a French touch, because our consultant chef was French.
Interesting.
So imagine having French touch cuisine, etc., and wine, which tastes like, one bottle tastes like vinegar. One bottle was amazing. The other bottle was a mess. So no consistent quality. So they're like, oh, let's just make our own wine. Why not? So they bought vineyards. They started making their own wine. And we did use the Wineworks facility at that time as well. So it was like a huge stepping stone for us as well. Now we have our own winery in Vayodstoj with a large capacity. I mean, large in Armenia. So around a 100,000 bottle capacity. But we do produce currently around 50,000, so around half of that.
That's fascinating, because, California, I don't think most people know that probably 90% of wine is not bottled by the growing agent. And it's really a farming practice, and then you sell your grapes or have somebody ferment the wine for you and then bottle it later. So I think it's a really necessary step for a growing wine market like Armenia. It seems people are interested in doing that. They want to explore this idea. And I heard, and we talked about this yesterday, I heard at the local wine festival, Guinea Fest in America, that it seemed like the supply was a little outpacing the demand. Does it feel that way in Armenia as well?
In Armenia, not not so much, but I do feel like a lot of the current producers are focused on markets abroad, Europe, Russia, the U.S. So everybody is focused on markets abroad because we are still, we have a consumption of 4.5 liters per person, per capita,
Wow.
annually. So I mean, we're still growing. When we first opened, it was like less than 0.5 or something. So
I wonder where that puts it in the worldwide scale.
well, like France is around 50 and 48. So
And
very,
California
very
is
low.
like 9, I think. I think America's like 9 or...
America is pretty high up there. It's I think 20 something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, according to recent details that I do some research myself because I teach at the Wine Academy. I teach wine business, and I'm trying to tell all these people, I'm like, look, if you want to get into the wine industry, you don't have to produce your own wine. There are so many things you can do. You can do wine marketing, which we really lack in Armenia
Yes.
and around the world, because one of the most important things is to be able to sell your story. A lot of countries can't do that because when you think of a certain country, you associate it with the wine, with the region. For example, you think France. Of course, you think Bordeaux, first of all. I mean, in Armenia, we do think Bordeaux, definitely. So we still haven't found ourselves. We call ourselves the biblical world, the ancient world of wine, the new old world, the old new world. I don't know, but we don't have this one kind of angle. And that's fine because we're still kind of discovering what we are, what
Yes.
grapes we have, what
Right.
kind of wine we should make. And all of this investment from abroad and expertise is really, really helping us as long as we are open to it. And it's really difficult to go to a village in Vayotzor, in Aravnadzor, start making wine and convince like even the people who live there, the people from the village that, look, we're doing a good thing. We want you to have a job. We want you to be able to make your own wine eventually. So it's really difficult in this industry, although it's small.
Why? So that's an interesting point. Part of the Armenian culture, part of sort of our resistance. I mean, it goes back to the 12 princes. What is the resistance to in the Armenian culture to the new things, to try things, to express themselves that might to the world rather than just Armenians?
So, as you know, we're not really good at group sports either. So,
That's true.
chess is great. What is that?
Weightlifting
Yeah, weightlifting.
Yeah, right.
We're good at that, but sports not so much. Although Armenia did win recently. If you're watching the football,
Yeah,
the
they
soccer.
beat the Wales or something.
Yeah. I don't remember. Yeah. So we are kind of slowly getting there. It's a cultural thing because we also have this saying like «Փորձված մածունը ամփորձ ավելի լավն է», something along those lines. So if you've tasted something, if you know how something is going to be, it's better to be safe. Because, like I said, throughout our history, we've been
That's a really
lying
good
to
point.
each other. We've been lied to. So it's kind of like something within our psychology. I think it's just we don't want to trust people. We don't want to be open to new things because we know the old one is not working well, but it's working. So I think also it's really interesting. When people ask me, I do think wine as like a civilized drink, as a cultural drink, has actually helped open up a lot of conversations to this. And we all need to have like one goal. So if the goal is to promote Armenian wine, it doesn't matter if my wine company or Boros's wine company or whoever's wine company is going to an expo. If we're going together, we're doing this together. That's what we did for the German pro wine exhibition.
Pro-wine, yeah.
So we all go together, we all work together. Plus, like I have a rosé, this person has a white, the other person has a sparkling. So coming together, it's really, really difficult to work on that. But we are slowly trying to group.
Well, it sounds like your organization that you've created and that you're working with is a step in the right direction. I think we talked about this yesterday. Almost every great wine district in the world has a cooperative of people, not cooperative in functionality, but in organization to promote wine from that region. And despite the fact that you are competitors, and maybe that's what the Armenian culture does, is that you always look at as the competition rather than the opportunity to band together and the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. But how did the old guard, since they're probably still out there, how did the old guard sort of respond to, let's say, Armas bringing an Italian winemaker or a German winemaker in Abris? What is there resistance to this idea?
Of course. We've been making wine for so long. Why do we need expertise from abroad? Because, I feel like a lot of people here, it's not only the wine industry, we compare ourselves to ourselves, which is great in like personal development, but not when you're trying to, create an industry. So you have to compare yourselves to your competitors. And our competitors, everyone's like, oh, Georgia, it's our neighboring country. They're our competitor. No, our competitors are Italy, France, Germany, Spain, because we're going out there. We're going out there to pro wine. We're going out there to many other, competitions. So our competition is not only Georgia; it's these big guys who have been producing wine for years and stably producing wine for hundreds of years. So that's our issue. We can come together and like bicker about, we have to have an appellation system, for example. We still don't have one of those. We had experts from abroad come and try to help us, and yes, they do understand like the basics of it all, but we need to give them the information, like what grapes should grow in the Areni village. Yeah, and what should that village, that area, in terms of GI indication, what should that be called? Because we have to work on naming as well. We have Khatun Kharji grape variety, we have Hakhtanak, we have Khandorni, all these amazing grape varieties.
All easy things to say in the world of wine.
Yeah, the easiest one is one of our best varieties, Areni. Sounds really nice,
right.
And they renamed the Khandorni grape variety Sireni. So we have so much to work on, and you realize why. I sometimes when I think about leaving the country, even just for a few days to just have some, a little vacation, I'm just like, who's going to do all that? Who's going to do all that? And my job, I think, our kind of function as in Vino in the beginning was to create just a place where people who enjoyed wine could come have a glass of wine in the correct temperature, in the correct glasses with the correct cold cuts. And just by doing all that, we have taught a lot of people how to actually drink wine, and that it's not such a sophisticated, snobbish thing. Wine should be easy.
A really valid thing and a very important point about the wine business, because you mentioned it earlier that this intellectual gathering in wine produces intellectual conversation, which it does. And I have this theory that it has a lot to do with the fact that it connects the human soul to the soil. It's the only beverage of all the beverages that have intoxicating value to it that does that, right? You don't do it with bourbon, you don't do it with beer, but you sit and you contemplate wine, and you're teaching that to a culture that's, it's really not used to that. Going back to your appellations conversation is really important. Typically you would use the UC Davis scale of heat, and you would determine how many hot days there are and how many cool days, what the temperature variation is and the soil composition. Then you call in a nurseryman who would say, yes, this is great for Syrah, or this is great for Areni. Do we even know enough about Areni and Sireni and these to know what its values are?
No, but I know that the Vine and Wine Foundation is really helping out everybody right now. They have an experimental vineyard where they have our indigenous grape varieties. So they're working on understanding like even the pruning system that we need to use, because you can't all use like a double Guyot system, for example, for everything. Right. So they're also doing that, and one of the people working there is actually, everyone at the Vine and Wine Foundation. One of them is one of my mentors, Zaroi Muradjan. Another one is my course mate at the Evian Wine Academy, Aramais. And so, just to have all these people there, and they're all your friends, and that you as a person who we produce our own wine, but I represent all of Armenian wine everywhere I go. So it's really important to know who has your back in the industry. And in terms of the appellation system, they did bring in experts from abroad, from France, I think, and from Europe in general, because they were one of the first. They're known for having their appellation systems well done. They know that the regulations, how they're regulated, etc. But right now, we really lack human resources. That is why the Evian Wine Academy was created. That is why currently for In Vino, for example, if we need staff members, we train them from zero. Because you have to know how to wash wine glasses. You have to know how to correctly pour wine. If you want to get anywhere in the industry, you have to start from the basics. You have to start, like you said, from the grapes, from the soil, from the terroir. And, people always ask me, why Armenian wine, Why should I drink Armenian wine if I can drink like Italian for the same price? And
you would know that answer.
And, it's kind of romantic, though, when you think about it. A romanticized answer is like, look, you only have one day a year, or like one time period a year to harvest these grapes. And you think about the villager in Areni, in Aravnadzor, who is, who harvests these grapes, who does pruning all year to have good quality. And then you take the grapes, squeeze them, make them into wine, and then you bring them to someone like a somm, right? And the somm tastes like, it's okay, nothing. And so that kind of breaks your heart, right? So we only have like a limited amount of land where we can actually produce the wine. And when you think about it, it is the philosophy of wine is, culture. And every vintage is different. 2020, what a vintage that was for the whole world, for Armenia especially. We had COVID, we had the war, etc. So every time I open a bottle of 2020, That's what I remember.
Takes you to a place.
Yeah, it takes you back. And, other beverages, yeah, they're fun. For me, after wine, it's always gin. So,
we're on the same page.
Yeah, and we do have Armenian gins, which is really interesting.
We'll have to
you
try
must
that.
try those, yeah. But wine itself, it's such a cultured beverage, and we have to teach people that, it's kind of like the sauce to any dish that you have. Wine food pairing is like a completely different story there with Armenian dishes, with Armenian cuisine in general, what to pair with what. So yeah, first of all, we really have to work on ourselves to be able to drink our own wine and to understand where it's from, so that when someone asks, it doesn't matter who, IT industry, etc., wine is always kind of the seasoning to every conversation. Should be that way.
Juliana told me, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, she and I've used this quote quite a bit because I think it's really fascinating. She used the term, she said, what other product in the world can you take halfway across the world, plop it on a desk, and say, this is who we are and when we were? And that's a pretty broad stroke statement because it's true.
100%.
Right? But who we are with what we have currently, which is probably what are we, 10 vintages into understanding what Armenian wine is, and maybe it's going to be 50 more before we really understand it, to say who we are. But there are things to be emerging. We had this conversation yesterday that seem to be appellated in their character anyway. And so we have the soil type, we have this terroir here.
Our water.
Yeah, our water. We don't know. We can't really define, the Arad Valley necessary from another part of Armenia as far as the character, but we want to. And I think that's an important part of the wine culture is to do that. And we were talking about appellating wines, but I have sensed, and this is now only wines that have come to America. I mean, I don't think there's that many.
Definitely not.
And there are obviously, when this happens in our industry, and we'll talk about the wine business in a second, but obviously the first ones to arrive in a foreign country are going to be the broader market, the broader character, maybe ones that even have a little sugar in them just to make them more appealing. But the more they do that, the less appellation they feel. And so the world's not quite ready for that until we figure this out.
Yeah, it's a really niche market.
And so the resistance to appellations is still pretty strong, and it's so interesting.
I think people just don't understand. They don't see the long-term strategy in it. People, because long-term thinking in Armenia is a little bit difficult with our current situation. With
yeah, that's true.
With everything, so it's all about right now. And if we look at it, from my perspective, time is going by really fast. And with all this expertise from abroad, from winemakers, from we have Michel Roland, we have Paul Hobbs, we have all these winemakers coming here with their expertise. We have winemakers from Alsace who produce biodynamic wines coming here. So all of this expertise is actually helping us move faster because we don't have to go by trial and error. I mean, we do have to go by trial and error, but there is some type of experience that is actually helping us go through this. So the appellation system, our terroir is very unique, with the high altitudes, with everything. And I understand that, when you say unique, everywhere in the world there are unique terroirs, but more people know how to market these terroirs. So we need to really work on that to explain to people why, Vayadzor Aghavnadzor is unique with the volcanic soil, with all the 100-year-old vines, with all this. So that's the key.
It's kind of an interesting idea. Just think about this. You mentioned high-altitude wines, and now in Argentina, they're starting to experiment. And, if you consider Argentina, it's New World, Australia's New World, America's New World for the listeners. But now they're getting around to taking the same Malbec, putting it at different elevations up the Andes to see what character, and it's producing some amazing wines. And so what is Armenia? Is Armenia a new world? Well, it can't be new world because they've been making wine for 6,000 years. And so it's kind of old world, but I think from a technology standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, it's new world. And the appellation part, and I want to finish that conversation with that, is that I think in America we've destroyed our appellations to the sense of there's no food culture. There wasn't. It got lost in the 60s because the highways created, restaurants that taste the same from California to New York. But the French and the Europeans have protected their cheeses, they protected their butter, they protected their wines. And I think here that's an important thing to do.
Well, the main thing you need is quality first.
Right,
So
well, that's true.
we've passed that already. We do have the quality that we need. So now we must work on protecting that quality, protecting our grapes, and all of that. But in terms of the like you said, having a certain type of wine, what I would characterize our wines and what Trinity, our wine company, also characterizes the wines as, they are modern wines with an ancient soul, because you can't describe
like
it anywhere else. How else would you describe the wines coming from a winemaker? Our winemaker studied in Montpellier. He did this Erasmus program. He came back, so he's really young and he's really enthusiastic. He started doing all these experimentations with like orange wine in Armenia with the garaces and natural fermentation, because we have our own indigenous yeasts. Every area does. So with that, so we have the older generation and we have the younger generation. The younger generation is more open to all of this. The younger generation is saying, let's try this, let's try that, let's try that. The older generation is already tired. They're like, we know this has been done, this has been tried, it's okay. Let's just continue this way. Don't tell the younger generation what to do. Give them advice.
Right.
You do have a lot of valuable advice. We should listen to your advice, but we should do what we see in the world is being done currently.
So when you have clients walk into your store, can you categorize them? Let's say a person that really doesn't understand wine and you're guiding them for the first time. And I have to say, yesterday I was very impressed with your staff. They knew a lot. They understood what they were talking about. They had opinions of what they were serving. There was a young man that came and spent a lot of time with me when we were tasting together and brought a bottle of the Haz.
Hazarvaz.
Yes, Hazarvaz. We tasted that together. It was very good. So that was very impressive. And it seems like you've been able to instill that value of the good glass of wine into your staff, and that's really important. But you have I'm guessing two types of clients. Ones that know what they want when they walk in there and looking for something different, or somebody's like, I don't understand what this is.
So,
how do you handle that?
One of those types of clients is turning into the other one. So let me explain. When Invino first opened, we literally had people walking in and they'd be like, oh, it's just wine, and just walking out. We had those instances. We had people like, for example, this young female would come in and be like, oh, we're going on a girls' night. What wine would you recommend? And I would be like, oh, let's take a refreshing rosé from Provence. And this girl would be like, I don't want wine made from roses. So we're going from that to the same people coming back and saying, look, I want this, 2018 vintage so-and-so wine, or Italian, maybe Chianti wine. And I'm just like, wow. So these people want to learn. There's that category of people. There is a category of people who find wine fashionable and they just want to drink wine. And you know what? Wine does communicate your image. What you drink does say a lot about you. So we are working on this emotional kind of connection that people have. And, at one point, this one was very vivid in terms of Artsakh wines. Everybody was drinking wine from Artsakh because of what happened. And so all of this is emotionally tied into everyone. So we do have all kinds of different clients, different guests who come. And right now we have a lot of people who are interested in the trends. So orange wine or betnat or natural wine. We have those trends currently in our wine shop. But we do a lot of events. So Meet the Winemaker or My Name is Chardonnay, where we take like 4 different Chardonnays from four different corners of the world. We do a blind tasting so people can use all their senses and not only look at the label. It's what's behind the label that really matters. So we're working on it. And, you might not be able to tell if you're just like a guest at Invino, but like the glasses we use, the temperature your wine is served at, what we suggest with what wine, and all of this and all the information we have about the wine. This is how you slowly teach people without really teaching them. They don't know that they're being taught. They're just coming there, enjoying their time, but learning something as they go.
So stimulating their intellect. One of the questions I wrote down was, how do you encourage people to continue the knowledge base of wine, because it never ends and it constantly changes. In fact, it's an interesting comment. There's a master somm who comes in once in a while to the office when he's in town. He makes wine in Puret. And he said, when I took the test, and this is 1996, one of the first North American master somms, he said, I had to learn about Argentina. I had to learn about South America. That was just coming online, Chile, of course. But now they have Armenia. Out of nowhere he says that. He goes, I don't know how they learn all this stuff, but so it sounds like what you're doing is to encourage the intellectual part of wine, having these tastings, let them compare 3 Chardonnays or 4 Chardonnays from different parts of the world, say vintage, whatever, and see how they react to that.
Yeah, we do have the beginners who are just, learning what Chardonnay is. And we do also have people who, for example, are studying for their WSET, let's say level 3 or 4, the diploma, and we do blind tastings together. So I think we created this community, and I think that's the beauty of our wine bar, that it creates this community. You can be sitting there drinking a bottle of wine, and I could just come up to you and be like, oh, that's the winemaker right there, sitting right there. And then the conversation flows. Like I said, wine really is a medium for conversation. And as you read a lot about, or you hear a lot about our ancestors, kind of how they solved problems, and there was always around a table with some wine. And of course the color of the wine matters as well, because we believe that white wine is for pure thinking, meditation. You can have a glass after lunch or during lunch, and you can have like a calm continuation of your workday. Rosé is more about love and flirtation and passion and all this, and red wine is philosophy. So when you're sitting down with a bunch of diplomats and you want to solve some really difficult questions, red wine can really help.
Wow.
Yeah, that's our philosophy, and it's been tested. If you're going on a date, you need that rosé.
Yeah, of course.
100%.
Yes. I will say yesterday's conversations were rather stimulating. I had a great time with Godin Bagdasarian and his daughter, and your staff, and then Nick, my nephew, putting together his sort of think tank meeting there, and it's exactly what you're talking about. That's what happened. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's take a break for our sponsor, Total Wine & More. There's always something new to try at Total Wine & More. I love this place. The other day I was in looking for a Napa Red and stumbled across the Prosecco aisle and had to buy this Prosecco that was fabulous for under $8. A great alternative to other types of sparkling wines. And then there's French Rosé at under $7, which is incredible. A huge selection of Kentucky bourbon. And with these low prices, I had to get both the wines that I was looking at. With the lowest prices over 30 years, always find what you love and love what you find at Total Wine & More. You can't buy spirits in Virginia or North Carolina. Please drink responsibly, and you must be 21 to purchase. That's Total Wine & More. Check it out. Back to the show. You started teaching wine business, and this is the part I don't think any listener understands. They might now, since they may have listened to a couple of these episodes. But wine business is completely different than the wine industry. I mean, that's the part of we have to make some money. We have to do this. This is for a profit. And so we have to grow the grapes. We got to pick them, ferment them, bottle them, get them to market with enough margin to sustain the next vintage, hopefully. Right? Mm-hmm. So how long have you been teaching this class, and what was the impetus of teaching this class?
So I was taught by some of the best teachers from the Yerevan Wine Academy when it was first established. I was one of the first to graduate, one of the first cohorts. And we were taught by professionals from Italy, professionals from UC Davis, professionals from Germany, from Geisenheim University. And so after our course ended, the second year, third year, we were given the opportunity to teach as well. So wine business, I really love conducting tastings, etc. But I think it's so important for people to understand that wine business is not just about making the wine and selling it. Wine business is also about barrels, about corks, about bottles, about all this, like the whole supply chain. And people, they want to make their own wine, but they don't, like I said, long-term thinking. They think that in 1 year, they're going to get all the return on their investments and all that. So I start off by saying you have to have a larger fortune elsewhere to make a smaller fortune in wine. That is one of my go-to quotes. It is really expensive, and not everybody can allow themselves to produce wine. And that romantic idea of you walking in your vineyards with a glass of wine in your hand, with your little hat on, etc. This is romantic. This is nice. Where are the numbers? Who is your market? Who are you producing for? And who's going to buy your wine? And how are you going to sell your wine? All of these things are so important. And Armenians are notorious for being businessmen, right? So we try to sell everything. Like, that's the thing. We're traders.
Yes, we're merchants.
We're merchants, exactly. So with wine, it's a little different because it has to have that emotional connection and all that. But I teach people think that Armenian wines in terms of price, they're okay priced, medium, starting from like 2,900 dram to like, I don't know, it could be up to 90,000 dram. But again, that question is always there. Why should people buy your wine? And that's what I teach them, how to understand the world wine market and what's going on with production, with grape production, with overproduction in the world. People are selling, bulk wine. That concept of bulk wine is like such a question mark. They're like, what do you mean bulk wine? I'm like, yeah, they just ship it in containers and then they ship it to a country and the country bottles it. They sell it. It's much cheaper. So all of this, they don't realize. They're looking at it from a small family winery, boutique winery perspective. And we have a lot of those small wineries, 1,000, 5,000 production, etc. So we really need the market to understand what we're dealing with. Like I said, our competition.
But it sounds like, because that's the issue in Napa Valley as well. I mean, except the difference is the romantic side of the business is developed by some surgeon who made billions of dollars, or a government contractor who used to build freeways, and now they get to buy this lifestyle. Sometimes they realize it's farming, and they didn't really want to be farmers. They wanted to be, show their wines. But is there an underswell in Armenia for people that see this lifestyle? So the lifestyle is starting to become known as this idea, maybe because of our history in the wine business and Noah landing the Ark on Mount Ararat, that, wow, we have some history here and we want to live this? There's enough of these people?
So the people who chase the lifestyle, there are a lot of them. Yeah. So they see the lifestyle, but they don't understand what the hard work that is put into all of that. And like I said, when you look at the wine industry, the people who actually grow the grapes, and so with 1,350 altitude in Vayotsor, in Aravnazor village, you can see like the people who work in the fields, like what they're doing. So once you see that, once you experience that, you kind of take a completely different look. You have a completely different view on what the wine industry is in general. But we have to teach people the lifestyle first, because it's the most attractive part. And we do have a lot of people who start off from the lifestyle, and then they realize what's going on. They're like, no, I want to invest here. I want to do this because I feel like I'm going to be helping people, like I said, work the land. Because, some of our villages are very like border villages, Khachik village. We need to work that land. If we don't, somebody else will,
Somebody
like I
take
said.
it, right?
So we really need to work on that as well. It's the romanticized version, but sometimes with wine business at the Wine Academy, we need to bring people down to earth, ground them, and show them exactly what's going on.
So you're like the
I'm like the bad person.
You bring this
you
bad
have
news.
dreams, let me shatter them. No, and it's reality.
We take it out of reality here.
Yeah.
Just for the listeners, 1,350 meters would be almost a mile high, actually, about 4,000 feet. So that's pretty high for the world of wine. When you think of Napa, somewhere around 700 feet, going up to like 1,200 feet. Big difference in the types of grapes are going to grow and the quality, not the quality, but the style that those grapes are going to produce of wine. But so you felt the need for this class. What other classes are offered to a potential winery owner in this group?
So with the Wine Academy, we offer this 18-month course, basically, where you eventually get a diploma. And we have microbiology, we have winemaking, viticulture, winery equipment, sanitation. Oh, that is so important.
So important.
Winery sanitation is so important. And wine business and marketing as well. I might have missed a few because they sometimes change the curriculum, but I feel like if you and these are night classes, so these are for people who who already have like a profession, who are already well established in their profession. They want to try something new, and most people, it's from like 6 to 9. The class 6:30 to 9. The classes take that long, and the groups. It's what's most important is like the people that come together. So we stay as a group and we know each other from the industry. I think why do people go to certain universities as well, because they're the people there have the same kind of mindset maybe. So anyway, I think the Wine Academy is one of the like I said, one of our main issues was human resources, and this is one way to help us.
Universities don't teach enology here?
They do. There's one agrarian university, but I think the textbooks are kind of old school. We do have some new people who are some of my course mates from the Wine Academy who teach there. Artak Gabrielian is also one of the people who teaches both at the Wine Academy and at the agrarian university. But I think that this short course really helps people understand which area of winemaking or the wine industry they really want to get into. So if you want to do wine marketing, you can't really learn that at agrarian university, but you can have that course and then decide, okay, I do want to make wine, I do like chemistry or microbiology, let me do that. So that's why I like this course. But the agrarian university, it's also getting this new it's getting kind of a facelift. So the director changed, and a lot of the people there are now. We have a lot of people working at Invino actually from the agrarian university as well. So they actually want to understand the whole sphere before understanding, do you really want to make wine, or do I really want to, for example, sell wine? Because selling wine is an art, hand-to-hand selling at a boutique wine shop, that is an art. You have to be able to do that. And one of the best things ever is when you suggest a wine, this person likes the wine, and then you just feel like, wow, okay, I've done my job, I know what I'm doing. You kind of feel more confident about yourself as well.
Yes, you touched on a whole bunch of stuff just then. That's really important because I had a young intern, young Armenian girl. Her parents have this little vineyard in their house, and they started bottling stuff. We talked about it yesterday. But and I had her write talking points for the podcast, and I had a lot of female winemakers in at that moment because women in wine is an important subject right now. And she got so inspired by these conversations that she applied to Cornell and to UC Davis, got into both schools, enology school. Wow. And I was teasing her because her parents make this wine, and they decided to buy grapes and ferment them. And, they had $20 a bottle into the manufacturer's wine. When I showed her, I can buy juice as good as that for $3 a bottle, right? And I said, go home and tell your parents now that you're an enologist. There are other ways to do this than to have to pick the grapes and do it all the time. But I think he said something easy for me to say, something very important about selling wine. And what's the typical scenario when are there distributors in Armenia that carry brands other than the Armenians thing? I noticed you had some Burgundies and Bordeaux's and some Italian wines in your shop. How does that work here?
So we do have over 1,500 wines currently. We started off with 650.
Wow.
So double. We do have wines from almost all over the world. Of course, mainly Italian because Armenians love Italian wine. It used to be French, but now it's Italian because they discovered the Negro Amaros and, the Puglia region, which is, I think, one of our favorite. So we do have a lot of distributors here, and people are bringing in more wine, and I think that's great and that's really healthy because we're not only drinking Armenian wine, we're comparing ourselves, and that's where that idea fits in. And sometimes you get really tired. You're really tired of drinking the same wine, same grape, etc. So you really need to kind of refresh your senses and understand and compare yourselves to others. And brand loyalty in wine, does that really even exist? It's like one day you're going to want to try the competitors, wine, or one day you're going to want to try something new, something else. So I'm really grateful for all of we import our wines ourselves as well as in vino, but very small amount just from our friends. And we do have a lot of large importers and distributors of non-Armenian wines.
So they come and say, hey, Mariam, I want to taste you on some Chablis that we just got in. Do they make an appointment? Do they come and just cold call you, and then you pull your staff aside? How does that work?
It's so different. It's very different. Sometimes I'm just sitting there. They come there with a bottle, and I'm like doing work, and they're like, "Hey, you want to taste this?" And of course, I want to taste it. It's a new bottle of wine, new vintage.
Right.
So that
but
sometimes,
I'm working here.
I'm working here, but also that is part of my job, so I kind of love it. They also invite us a lot to recently we went to Barton and Guestier in France, in Bordeaux.
Wow, nice.
So and it snowed in Bordeaux, and we were like, oh, of course the Armenians are going to bring snow to Bordeaux. It hasn't snowed there in like 20 years.
Sure, they appreciate that. Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. And we went with this company TMW, and they're the official distributor of these wines here. So a lot of these companies, they do bring the wines, and they really do work on these wines, but they're also distributing local wines. So it's like balance between local and imported wines.
I suppose that the industry, the way we solve that problem, just so between merchants, and my dad handed this off to me in 1989. He goes, son, I taste on Tuesdays. So when I was a kid, I would set up the tasting room for my father's at the evening, and the doctors that supported his pharmacies would come and they taste wine as a benefit to being, part of the group. And when I started, Tuesdays is tasting day. Well, that took me to 35 years every Tuesday, unless I was sick or on vacation, and something north of 100,000 wines, just out of pure discipline. And boy, you learn a lot doing that. But otherwise, point of this conversation was they will suck your time up. I mean, they'll just show up and they'll just start pouring stuff, and you're in the middle of doing a job. Yeah. And I couldn't deal with that. So I just created an online calendar, and every 15 minutes is a new rep. And it would be bottom fishers selling junk and, distributors. Yeah. But what's happening in this, particularly in the Southern California market, but across the U.S., is a consolidation of distributors, and brands are being diluted completely. And I don't suppose the Armenian market is there yet.
Not yet, but we do see that in our future. And people need to understand what is going on in the world, because it's going to come here as well at one point. But I think that's a great idea. I mean, we do tasting Tuesdays and Thursdays for our guests. But for me, like I said, the industry is not so big to, usually. So what we actually do when all the winemakers or the wine experts are not busy, we do kind of bring in all the wines which are offered to us for tastings, and we bring them all in and we do a blind tasting of the wines. So we don't know what we're tasting.
Good.
And every day there is always a new producer of wine just popping up, and they're like, this is our wine. I'm like, okay, so we're going to do our blind tasting a month from now. So we collect all that wine, we do the blind tasting we do it with the American Wine Society tasting sheet, because so far it's the easiest. It's a 20-point system. And if something's off, it automatically goes. And we say you have to get at least 15 points. So we do that, and we taste the wines so that it's fair. We do that with all the wines, local wines.
That's great.
Imported wines you're a little more confident with, so we don't really have to taste all of them. You don't have to taste a bunch of Chablis to know the quality, or a bunch of Chiantis, or Rieslings from Germany. You don't really have to taste them all, because you know the producer, you know the person bringing the wine. But local wines, there is no filter for local wines. Everybody can produce anything, and it's not about like the lab results. The pH is good, the acidity is good, sulfur content, blah blah. No, it's about the tasting portion.
Sure.
We do lack that in Armenia.
The tactile part of the industry.
Exactly. So we tried to take over that, but that's also we're actually going to do this huge tasting on the 28th, I think, which is for our Armenian wines. This is the kind of where we have this warehouse. I think it's in Germany somewhere, and we do a tasting of these wines which are qualified to be in that warehouse. So when all these wines go to that warehouse together, so like we team up, all these wines go there, then you can actually ship the wines all over Europe without having like huge fees.
Yeah, right.
So it's like a consolidated palette of wines, and it goes there.
Great.
Or it's in Belgium, or it's in Germany. I'm not quite sure about that, because I kind of lost track, but they do like winesofarmenia.store or something, and you can buy it online there.
Interesting. Well, what I experienced, and I think you just mentioned it, and that is we weren't as confident over the years with the fact that whether they import or domestic as to the relative quality. We have some certain confidence level that how good they would be. And in fact, we found that the importation, through the 70s and 80s, they would bring anything. And we talked about bulk wine. I mean, this Valencia whites that are, 60 cents a liter. It's just junk. But we did find that the distributor network brought more reliable wines than the brokerage side. So somebody's bottom fishing, looking for stuff to sell, trying to make some margin. The rejection rate was much higher than the filter of a distributor who's tasting wines on their own behalf, and sending reps out to sell. So that probably will land that way here.
Our channel is just directly through distributor. So the distributor goes, tastes it, brings it back, sells it to you. So it's like directly through them. So we don't have anybody else doing all that, or we don't have that brokerage part that you mentioned. And it's mainly even through wineries. We do have direct sales, but we do also have distributors. But it's like a really easy chain. It's like from the winery to the distributor to the wine shop, wine bar. So they don't sell direct. Too.
That was an interesting thought. The direct-to-consumer world in the Armenian wines, does it exist? I mean, that's what we were. We were DTC only.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's rules around, like, we have 50 states with 50 taxes.
That's crazy, I know. In Armenia right now, we do direct sales from wineries, but it's like very rarely. Just if you're going to the winery, people do. In the U.S. you have a better culture of actually going to the winery to buy the wine, etc. Here we don't have that culture yet, because we're slowly getting to the wine tourism, and that's a whole different story. Tourism in Armenia has always been monasteries and like going to like different churches and etc. Now they're always adding the wine element, and there are some wineries that are actually really open to that and really amazing to visit. I know that on the way to Vajotstod we have Dushba. In the Aragazotan region we also have like Vanardi, Armas, Voskevas. We have a bunch of wineries where you can just visit and have a great time. And they do a lot of events too, like movies and all that.
It's interesting because we went to Armas Monday. Victoria's a very good friend. And she put together an amazing presentation.
Of course.
Her knowledge base, and you talked about the sanitation of the winery. I can believe how spotless her winery was, which is necessary, as we know. But I was impressed. What I wasn't impressed with was the infrastructure to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Like the wine trail here has a little time to go to where you want to jump in a car and drive to someplace like that.
Definitely. And some of the areas are close by, so you can go for 30 minutes, but also there are some areas are really far away, so like an hour and a half. And the hour and a half in Vajotstor, this road has been built, and I'm so thankful that it has actually been, paved all the way,
That's
because
nice, yeah.
it used to be like 2 hours, and the roads were so bumpy that by the time you
jeez.
got there, you were like, oh, I'm so tired. Like you didn't want to taste any wine at all, and then think the thought of actually having to come back all the way, so
Yeah,
you'd want to
right.
stay there, but there was no place to stay. So that is actually working really well right now. So the roads and infrastructure, and the government has said that winemaking in the wine sector is really important for us. So I think a lot of things are being done towards that as well. So just like the infrastructure, water was an issue because in some areas we still can't get enough water. Not in Vajotstor, we don't really do anything irrigation, but if you're planting new vines, you do need a lot of irrigation. So it is a priority sector, and it is having this boom. So why not just go and push it and help it all? But we can't do that if it's only one producer or two producers. We really have to do it all together.
Look, districts like Washington, Oregon, we went in 1989 to the McMinnville Pinot Noir Festival. They were just learning Pinot Noir from the Burgundians, and it's taken, that's what, 23, 30 years. And so you have that ahead of you, but they have made tremendous inroads, not only in quality, distribution. There's a wine trail. You hop in your car, you can go to a number of places in a short order of time. And I think that's important. How many more people like you are there that have this passion to do this work and to stir this pot? She hesitates.
I don't know. I mean, I have a lot of friends in the industry who are very passionate about wine, young winemakers who are trying to create their own brands or are working for another brand. So a lot of people, and my whole course at the Wine Academy, I'm telling you, like Zara Keçiçyan, she's a winemaker. She worked in another company. Now she's now, a winemaker. She was assistant winemaker. Now she's winemaker. And then we have Lilia, who is working in Burgundy right now. So she's getting all that experience from Burgundy, because we do believe the Armenian Noir grape is similar to somehow a Pinot Noir, but with like spiciness of a Shiraz or Montepulciano. And then, Artak Gabrielian, Aramais, we have Vova, all of these people, they are, amazing in their fields right now. So I'm so happy to know everyone, and these are the people that if I need something, I just give them a call, and we get everything done. It's just one phone call.
What you're saying though is like when I need something, so you are the pot stirrer, the flag waver, and that's what we need, and you need to inspire other people to be the same, because it takes more than one force of nature to do that. You have so many conversations. There's so many pieces that we could touch on, and we touched on it yesterday. But one of them was what you just said. You have a friend in Burgundy making wine. Most of the winemakers I interview over the years had traveled the world to make wine, so to learn what the Burgundians would do, what the Bordelais would do, what you might do in Australia, with a Shiraz or something. Are the Armenian winemakers coming to the table with this sort of worldwide approach, or are they sort of saying, no, we don't need it, we got it under control already, sorry?
Like I said, it's generational.
Yeah.
The younger generation wants to go out, they want to see, they want to experience, and they want to bring back. And that's what is lovely, because, just leaving and doing something elsewhere, anyone can do it. Like I said, this is like, my grandmother was a sculptor, so I would rather say this is like a clay ready to be molded instead of dough. But it is really something that if you're here right now, it's still the revolution of Armenian winemaking. This is the time period that we call the revolutions or the renaissance of Armenian winemaking. And if you're here right now doing something, this is going to be in the history books, because you are creating an industry from an industry which was kind of, unknown, halfway collapsed. No one knew what was going on. So you're here now, you are making an impact. And that is what I tell everyone. And, a lot of my friends, everybody asks me, like, why did you guys move back? you know, after 10 years in America, why did you move back?
We live in Granada Hills. No kidding.
Right? No, it was not my choice to move back. It was my parents who forced me, and I
Really?
would not speak to them for months because it's like, you
Wow.
know, where you would, supermarkets didn't exist here. There were all those like little small
Yeah.
little shops, and I would be like, where's my aisle of cereal? I want my Lucky Charms, you know,
Yeah,
like I was
yeah.
like this kid who didn't know anything. And when
Fascinating.
when Vino opened, I was only 18, so you know, barely drinking wine, barely tasting wine, etc. And it was my business partner Vahe Balulian who had this whole concept, because we were making our own wine for the restaurant because we realized food wine pairing is important. It's important to have good wine. And he's like, well, there's no place where you can just go enjoy wine, you know. And people right now, we have the Yerevan Wine Days, which is a crazy festival.
Yerevan Wine Days.
Yeah, yeah.
And we missed it.
Yeah, you did by like a few weeks. But I think that's one of the most amazing festivals that takes place, because it's not only about wine, it's about food, and there's a lot of barbecue happening, so you can't really go and like taste wine, etc. But it's something to get people drinking more wine. And you have concerts and you have food, etc. And Sadian Street has kind of become the place for wine. So if you want wine, you know where to go. You know, you come to Sadian. And it's funny because when you think about it, when I think about it, 10 years ago, that street was dead. Like, it's center, but not really center. You know, it's close to my university. That's the most important thing, because I was studying in the Brusov Linguistic University, and like I was studying, going to work, going home. I don't know how I managed to do all that, how I managed to pass all those courses, but somehow it worked out for the best. And so now Sadian Street is kind of, we have 20 restaurants in that tiny little area.
Amazing.
20 different, both wine, not only wine oriented, but mainly everybody has wine. We have some bakeries too. Coffee is a huge thing in Armenia now. So, you know, you look at the trends around the world and you can tell what's going to come to Armenia soon. So if you're just willing to have an open mind to see, you know, what else Armenia needs, because right now in the food industry, there are a lot of restaurants. New restaurants, different styles, etc., etc. But people are getting tired of all that. They want experiences. They want a lot of,
For sure. The food quality is much higher than it was. The fact that the varieties there. But of course, last night we had kebab.
Yeah.
Like the third time we're here. And it's like, come on. You know,
when you're in Yerevan.
do better than that. But no, I was extraordinarily impressed with Sadian Street and walking through and finding your place. But to say 10 years ago that we're going to open a wine shop on a street like this
people thought we
seemed
were
like
crazy.
a death nail.
Yeah, people thought we were crazy. They were like, the distributors whose wine we were going to sell would walk in and be like, this is going to fail. What are you doing? The producers
thanks for
of
the
wine.
encouragement.
Yeah, and we were just like, thanks. Yeah, thank you. But now everyone's like, you knew something. What did you know? Like, no, we just had this like love for wine, passion for wine. We realized, so National Geographic was there, and they deemed the Armenian cave the oldest in the world, World Heritage kind of site and all that. So that was happening. Eduardo Ernekian was investing. Vahe Keshkerian was coming back to do something here. There was already kind of established wineries.
Yep.
Some of the wineries were kind of established. Some of them were, again, trying to be reborn from what they were into something that is now coinciding with like this new age of wine thinking and all that. And it was really funny, just like a little light on Sadian Street. And I remember when we would close the shop and the lights would go dark, like the street would go dark, you would be scared. You would have to like run all the way to Tumanyan, which is only like 2 steps, you know,
Wow.
like, in that direction. And people say like, oh, Invino started it. But it's funny because when Invino opened, there was nobody else and nobody else was coming. We opened our second restaurant, Tapastan, 30 steps from Invino. And that's when people are like, something's opening up there. Let's do this. It used to be computer stores. You could walk in, buy a keyboard, a computer, a mouse, or whatever.
How exciting you created this street.
I know, but people ask me what's the secret, right? Like,
you don't have a secret. The passion was the secret.
Just keep your head down, do your job, do it to the best of your ability, and that's it.
It's not always, I've thought about this a lot, it's not always you build a better mousetrap and the world will be the path to your door. That's not the case. There are a lot of good mousetraps that don't get any traction. And here you are, just an idea, really, and you create a lifestyle and a culture on a street like King's Road or something like that in England. All of a sudden, this is kind of cool, hip place. And my wife and I were walking yesterday going, wow, Look at all these people walking around. Look at the restaurants. There's a variety of restaurants.
And they're
that's
smiling. People are smiling. They're enjoying their time. When we first moved here, everybody was all wearing black all the time. And, you would talk to someone and they would answer like in this really mean way. And, I'd go home to my mom and be like, Mom, back in the States, it's like, Hi, how are you? Welcome. Right. And here it's just like, take your, groceries and leave. And I would be so depressed. I was like, Mom, why are we here? Why are we in this country? Why did you bring me back here? I had a whole future. I was like going to high school. So you could imagine how difficult that was. But,
that's brutal.
Yeah, but you said one thing that's very important, discipline. Tasting Tuesdays. That is something that I really appreciate, and people don't understand that. It's all about discipline. And, if I was just tasting wine all day and, just having fun all day, because wine, like 1,500 bottles, that's no joke. Like I can have a wine a day and
It's huge.
It's huge, and it's really difficult to be there, but just be there and do all that and also have all that wine around you, because you're always tempted, like, oh, let's sit with this person, because so many interesting people come to you constantly want to have some time with them. But it's all about discipline. It's all about the work behind the scenes, which nobody sees. It's all about connections with the right people. It's about, just being able to organize the staff trainings, for example. So people don't see that. They see the facade and they're like, wow, this is amazing. And you're just like, we worked really hard to have
you're in
all
the you've created the hospitality side of things, and that's tough business. That's hard work. And we had a tasting room when I was running the shop, and I was there on Saturdays. And you've got to create the conversation, and you've got to tell the stories, and you've got to inspire people to want to participate in what you're doing. And that does take, I guess if you're to liken it like a restaurant, the back house, which is 60% of the rest of the business. The front part where the money comes in is only 40% of it. So it's a tough road to hoe, and it's very inspiring. You're inspiring me. You're inspiring other people to do those things, because people are inspired by passion. They're inspired by people that do things, that make things happen, and hopefully you inspire them to make something happen. We're already at, we're past an hour. Almost an hour.
Oh, my goodness.
So I appreciate this time. We can do this again, probably do it forever. I
just have one thing to say, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please do.
I really do admire what you are doing by sharing everyone's stories. And I think that also takes a lot of passion, a lot of effort to do all that, because it's not easy, having a conversation, trying to keep the conversation flowing, especially when we don't have wine around. But,
yeah, that's right.
But I really do admire what you're doing, because you're sharing all these stories and creating this inspiration for all these people, and people who are not wine lovers, wine enthusiasts. They're like, maybe I should try that 2018 vintage from Aravnadzor or something like this. So thank you very much for inviting me, for having me, and for being here, for being in Yerevan.
It is about the story.
Always.
It's always about the story. So
not
congrats
easy
on
to
your
tell.
story.
Thank you.
And we look forward to it. We're going to swing in there before we get out of here. We're leaving Saturday, I think. We're going to Paris. But we will swing in one more time, at least to share a glass of wine. And
Perfect.
Had a great time last night, touching glasses with Garen and his daughter and all the folks there. So cheers and good luck, and we'll see you soon.
Cheers. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe, because there's more great interviews on their way. Folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.